I still remember the exact sound his laugh made when he said it. Sharp, careless, like the words didn't matter because in his mind, I didn't matter either. "Relax," he said, leaning back in his chair, tapping the polished table with his pen. "People like you don't win cases like this." The room chuckled softly, not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to let me know I was already dismissed. And in that moment, standing there with my file clutched too tightly in my hands, I realized something painful and simple at the same time. They weren't even trying to hide it. They had already decided who I was. I didn't grow up expecting fairness. I grew up learning how to stay quiet, how to keep my head down, how to survive being underestimated. My name is Marcus Hale now, but back then it didn't mean anything to anyone. I was just another kid from the south end of Brookridge raised by a mother who worked double shifts and taught me early that the world doesn't hand you justice. You earn it sometimes with scars. I didn't have connections, didn't have a safety net, didn't have a last name that opened doors. What I did have was a long memory and a refusal to stay small. The day everything changed started like any other. I was delivering documents to the firm, a temp assignment I'd taken just to keep the lights on. I wore my only decent jacket, the one with the loose button I kept forgetting to fix, and waited in the lobby while men in tailored suits walked past me like I was part of the furniture. That's when I saw him. Daniel Crow, senior partner. The kind of guy whose name was whispered with admiration and fear in equal measure. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, it was brief dismissive, like checking the time. "You're late," he said, even though I wasn't. "I'm right on time," I replied, calm, polite. He smirked. "Sure you are." That was the first exchange, the first spark, and I didn't know it then, but that moment would follow me for months. Crow had a reputation. Brilliant in court, ruthless in private. He crushed opponents not just with law but with pressure, intimidation, quiet threats delivered with a smile. People admired him for it. I watched how junior associates straightened when he walked by, how interns laughed a second too late at his jokes. Power does that. It teaches people to bend before they even realize they're bowing. A week later, something unexpected happened. One of the files I delivered came back wrong. Not my mistake, but I was the easiest target. Crow called me into a conference room filled with glass walls so everyone could see but not hear. That's when he said it. That line, "People like you don't win cases like this." And then, almost as an afterthought, "You should be grateful you're even in this building." I felt heat rush up my neck. Not anger yet. Something quieter, older. The feeling of being seen as less not because of what I'd done, but because of who they thought I was. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying his voice. And instead of shrinking, something in me hardened. I started staying late, not to impress anyone, to learn. I read case files no one asked me to read. I listened from hallways, memorized arguments, watched patterns. Crow's patterns. He cut corners when he thought no one noticed. He bullied witnesses when cameras weren't around. He relied on fear more than facts. And slowly, quietly, I began to see cracks in the image everyone worshipped. The opportunity came in the form of a case nobody wanted. A wrongful termination lawsuit filed by a warehouse worker named Elena Ruiz. Single mother. No money, no leverage. The firm took it as a favor to a corporate client expecting a quick dismissal. Crow assigned it to a junior associate who panicked and quietly asked for help. That help landed on my desk unofficially. No credit, no title, just work. I read Elena's statement once then, twice. Then I sat back and laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was obvious. They had fired her to make an example, and Crow knew it. He was planning to bury her with paperwork and let time do the rest. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let that happen, not this time. I started building the case from the shadows, found inconsistencies, tracked emails, matched timelines. Every night, I went home exhausted, hands smelling like cheap coffee and printer ink. But for the first time, I felt alive. Like I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing. The first real confrontation happened in the prep room before mediation. Crow walked in, saw me standing there with the files, and froze. "Why are you here?" he asked, not hiding his irritation. "I've been assisting," I said. "With what?" "With the facts." He laughed, that same sharp laugh. "This isn't a charity project, don't get attached." I met his eyes. "I don't get attached, I get thorough." Something shifted then. He felt it too. You could see it in the way his smile faded just a second too long. Mediation failed. Of course it did. Crow wanted trial. He always did. He believed intimidation worked better in public. What he didn't expect was that the junior associate would step aside 2 days before court, citing personal reasons. Suddenly, there was a gap, and no one else wanted the case. No one except me. The room went quiet when I said it. "I can do it." Crow leaned forward. You're not even licensed here." "I am," I said, sliding my credentials across the table. "Transferred last year. You never asked." Silence. Not laughter this time. Calculation. He tried to block me. He really did. But paperwork is stubborn, and rules don't care about ego. By the time we walked into that courtroom, Crow was forced to sit across from me, jaw tight, eyes sharp. And for the first time, the power balance felt unstable. The trial was brutal. He mocked my opening statement with subtle gestures, rolled his eyes when I spoke, whispered to his team like I wasn't worth addressing directly. I let him. Every underestimation is a gift if you're patient enough. When it was my turn to cross-examine the HR director, I watched Crow lean back confident. 10 minutes later, she was sweating. 20 minutes later, she contradicted her own email. 30 minutes later, the courtroom shifted. You could feel it. That collective intake of breath when people realize the story they were sold doesn't add up. Crow objected. Over and over. I stayed calm. Answered clean. The judge noticed. The jury noticed. And Crow started losing control. His voice sharpened. His posture stiffened. He interrupted me once too often and earned a warning. The man who thrived on dominance was being stripped of it piece by piece in public. The final blow came when I introduced an internal memo he swore didn't exist. I'd found it buried in an archived server, time-stamped undeniable. When the words appeared on the screen, I heard him exhale. Not loudly. Just enough. He stood up during recess and walked past me. "You think this makes you someone?" he hissed. I looked at him. Really looked at him. "No," I said. "It just shows who you are." The verdict came back after 3 hours. Wrongful termination. Full damages. Applause broke out before the judge could stop it. Elena cried. I sat still. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. Across the room, Crow stared at the table like it had betrayed him. Afterward, in the hallway, he tried to speak. I didn't wait. I walked past him the same way he used to walk past me. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. The fallout was fast. Internal review. Whispers. Crow resigned before the investigation finished. Some called him a casualty of politics. Others knew better. As for me, offers came in. Titles, salaries, respect, finally. Funny how quickly that shows up once people can't ignore you anymore. But here's the part that matters. Winning didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like breathing after holding it in for years. Like standing up straight without bracing for impact. And I realized something important. The real victory wasn't beating him in court. It was refusing to become what he expected me to be. So let me ask you something. How many times have you been dismissed before you even spoke? How many times did someone decide your worth based on a glance, a label, a background you didn't choose? And when that moment comes again, because it will, what will you do with it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was justice served here, or was it just a shift in power? And if you've ever been underestimated, tell your story. Someone out there needs to hear it.